Hi, I'm Caffeine, and this video is sponsored by 2 weeks of not getting any sleep. Whee! Dark bleatings, everyone! In today's video, I'm going to be recommending a horror book starting with every letter of the alphabet from A to Z. Really excited to do this. I am absolutely pumped up on caffeine, and I'm considering the Pro Plus because I have not slept very much in like 2 weeks. For those of you who might have seen the post I put on YouTube last week because we were unable to film or upload anything, I have been dealing with a poorly kitty cat and I love her very dearly, and she's been my bestie for like 15 years and it's been very stressful, and she seems like she's getting better now, but yes, the last couple of weeks I've been waking up between the hours of 4 and 6 a.m. every day for some reason, because that's the time zone she picks to the sound of a cat being sick. Such a nice sound. Okay, so the books that I have compiled for you here, I have a couple of rules. So I have only listed one book per author, which is quite hard for me in some cases. I tried to do a good mix of traditionally published and indie, so we're ranging from traditional publishing all the way down to self-published. And I've also tried to do a mix of like novels, short story collections, novella length kind of stuff. So hopefully there'll be like a good mix, something for everyone on this list. I did have to delve into my Kindle list as well because I always forget to include Kindle books. So I've got a mix of my physical copies and my Kindle books, and there will be more lists like this coming because I ended up making a spreadsheet of all the books I've read that I used GOODREADS to help me with that, and I realized like there are just so many that I'd love to talk about in lists like this, so I can't possibly only do. So this is the first A to Z recommendation list for horror books. So without further ado, A is for all of the Adam Neville. I'm only kidding. I did say one book per author. I did say one book per author, so I am going to stick to that. And it's been really hard for me to only put one Adam Neville book on this list. And it's not one starting with A. I just thought I'd throw that out there, that you should just as a general rule, just read all the Adam Neville. And I'm not going to talk about Adam Neville too much until I get to the book I might have put on this list by him. But I will say this, it was about 6 years ago that I discovered Adam Neville. What an incredible stay up all night, read an entire novel in one sitting, which I'd never done, 100+ pages. So you can only imagine. Really good actually, this author. There was that whole thing, of course, with the hat made out of the pasta, the internet flying out of my chest. Okay, so let's get to the list, shall we? So A is for Among the Living by Tim Lebbon, who I also, oh my god, the number of Tim Lebbon books I wanted to put on this list, but one per author, which is why I have to do more lists really. Among the Living by Tim Lebbon is a sort of very cold weather, perfect for winter time, so perfect for this time of year definitely, at least in the UK. Horror novel that will be released next month. So this is the only book on the list that isn't out yet, but I did get an ARC, so I was really excited, and I read it I think, no, did I do it in one sitting? Very few sittings, if not one. It's so good. It's about a group of people that gain access to a caving system because of ice and snow and everything thawing, so it's the first time that this cave has been accessible to people, and they go down there, and there's something down in that cave, and maybe something comes back out of the cave with them, and it's going to be a really bad time for everyone, for me, possibly all of humanity. Can't recommend that enough. I would definitely add that to your sort of like pre-order list if you haven't already. Really excited for it to come out so that I can see everyone else's reviews of it. So yeah, I'm probably going to post, I have already talked about it in a weekly wrap-up video, but it's very likely that I'm going to do an entire just dedicated review video for that because I can't stop talking about or thinking about it. So yeah, really excited about that one. B is for Billy and the Cloner... Caffeine, I need you. B is for Billy and the Cloneasaurus by Stephen Kosanewski. The reason that I'm including it on this list specifically, it would have gone on a list anyway, but until the end of February you can get the ebook for free. So it's been out for a while, this book. It's very weird. I haven't really read anything like it before, and it's one of my favourite Steve Kosanewski books. It's about a guy called Billy who is one of 6 billion, I think, identical clones. So the entire Earth is it's like with a dystopian type of thing. The entire Earth is populated only by billies, and they're all, you know, they all kind of like serve the same purpose, and they have this sort of like mechanical day-to-day lives. But Billy starts to get, you know, some ideas that are unusual, and things go awry, and it's really good, really funny concept. A good read for you potentially if you like sort of a mix of dystopian sci-fi horror type stuff and a little humor thrown in there as well. C is for Cunning Folk by Adam Neville. Who would have guessed, you guys, that I get to speak about him again so soon? So Cunning Folk is so good, man. This is very darkly humorous also. Oh my god, I love this book so much. This was a one sitting read for me again. This is about a family who move into a fixer-upper house, kind of dad's idea. There's potential for a lot of stress in his marriage because of this, because the house needs a lot of work and money put into it and things like that. And the next door neighbours are just these neighbours from hell, you might say. And it, you know, what starts off as like a minor kind of disagreement ends up becoming a very like big deal. And I'm smiling because I remember being like amused by this but feeling like, oh, I mean in real life I wouldn't be amused by this, but it is funny to read, I think, because it's the base of what's happening is very relatable. But of course it's Adam Neville, who I think is, you know, basically the king of folk horror at this point. So I was so excited to see where it went, and I was not disappointed. So yeah, in case you can't guess, I cannot recommend this book to you enough. D is for Despicable. It's Den of the Wererats by Terry Miller. Oh god, I need to sleep. Den of the Wererats by Terry Miller is a despicable, heinous work of mild extreme horror, I would say. This is definitely more for fans who like their horror on the teetering on the extreme side. I suppose I say that because there's subject matter in it that's like really quite horrible. You might want to look at trigger warnings, especially if you're sensitive to SA, stuff like that. But it's exactly what it sounds like, based on the title. You know, swap werewolf with wererat, and there you have it. I enjoyed it way more than I felt like I should have for sort of my sensitivities, but yeah, that's a little bit harsher in terms of like topics, I think, maybe than some of the others. But yeah, might be worth a go if you're into that kind of thing. E is for Exquisite Corpse by Poppy Z. Bright, aka Billy Martin. Also an extreme horror read, but this was my first ever extreme horror book, and I picked this up when I was much younger, and I didn't know that extreme horror was a genre or anything, so I didn't realize like how absolutely brutal and savage this was going to be. However, typically speaking, I don't really like extreme horror. It's kind of like not my bag. I don't like reading about, you know, visceral extreme human suffering. I'm all for zombies ripping people's guts out and stuff, but I don't like person on person sort of inflicted heinous acts. Like that kind of stuff just makes me feel, I don't know, I think I read to escape the world that it, you know, that side of the world that does exist. So I don't like reading it in my fiction, like nihilistic type stuff, you know. But this is a work of art. It's so incredibly written, and it made me cry. And oh, I should probably tell you about what it's about. Basically, serial killers, and the particular target that's featured most is quite upsetting, but it's really very moving, and I think it's like, I don't know, it's like kind of like a powerful book. So I highly recommend this, but again, maybe check the trigger warnings if there are things that you might be sensitive about. This is, from my memory, it's been a while since I read this, I think it's quite sexually explicit in some places, but it's nasty because we're dealing with serial killers, so like people who are like really messed up. But yeah, what an incredible book. I would definitely read. I haven't read any more Poppy Z. Bright, but I plan to. Yeah, great book. F is for Full Immersion by Gemma Amor. I'm not going to talk about it too much here just because I've already talked a lot about it in my end of year video for 2023 because this was my favourite horror book of last year, so I talked about it for about 10 minutes. Then I also talked about it in a bit more detail in a weekly wrap-up video, so I'll link those in the description if you're interested. But yeah, this is a really, really great book. It's about a woman called Magpie who's severely depressed. She's got sort of postnatal things going on, postnatal depression, and she seeks out this really new, innovative but experimental type of therapy. And it's like, this is kind of like a sci-fi techno horror almost, but yeah, really great book. G is for The Glut by Matthew Cash, and no one is more surprised than me how much I loved this book, because just going by the cover alone, and this is no disrespect to Matthew or the cover artist, this is just my personal reading taste, but going by the cover alone, I didn't want to read this, and I am so glad that Matthew submitted it for review to Happy Goat Horror, because I probably wouldn't have picked it up, even though I do like Matthew Cash's writing. But I just thought that this was going to be like a really gross read and possibly extreme horror, so I couldn't have wanted to read it less. And again, I say that with complete, like, no disrespect to the author, that like I made assumptions about what I thought it was going to be. And yes, it was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. There were bits that I had to skim over because they were making me feel like I was going to be sick in my own mouth. And if you think that's a disgusting thing to say, you've seen nothing until you've read The Glut. But it was so well written, and the concept was so interesting, and it was so like, it was so well executed that I will be raving about this book for a while. I'll be talking more about this in a weekly wrap-up video that's coming up soon, Sunday's weekly wrap-up video. This is a story about duality, so think, you know, the kind of messaging that you find in werewolf stories typically, or Jekyll and Hyde type stuff, which actually is referenced in this book. So it's about a guy who's really, really struggling with his weight. He's just got this really compulsive eating disorder, I'd say. He just can't stop eating. He knows it's going to kill him. He knows he's way too heavy. He knows he has to lose weight, but he just can never summon up enough willpower to just stop. And I think that that is so relatable, because there are people with very varying degrees of like weight and weird food relationships and issues and things like that, but it's really, really relatable for that reason, even though I'm not like in this guy's shoes. But I know how it feels to think, for God's sake, I barely moved today. Don't eat the third French fancy, and then 6 French fancies later I'm, you know, I've had a tasty time, but so full of regret. The concept is that he finds a way to like get his willpower in check, but it is so like weird and out there, and it's got some very dark sort of like spiritual themes, I'll say. I don't want to spoil it, but oh my god, what a ride. I've never like read anything like this. It was just so interesting, and I thought I knew where it was going to go. I thought that this was just going to be about a guy who finds this weight loss technique, and it was just going to be his story, but like the world of this story just keeps like, yeah, it just kept getting bigger and bigger, so no pun intended. So it was, yeah, really, really great. As you can see, I'm very enthusiastic about that one. H is for House of Leaves by Mark Z or Z Danielewski. So people are in camps about this one, like they're either like me, or really, really enjoyed this and thought this was like a great book to read, or they think it's pretentious crap. Now, I do not think this is pretentious crap at all, but it is one of those books, like, you can't just sit down of an evening with a wine or a cup of tea and just casually read this. This is kind of like doing a uni assignment. So I would consider this book, to a degree, work to read. Let me explain. It is about a house, amongst other things, but so the house measures wider inside than it is outside, which is impossible. So I really liked that. And there's a closet or a door. They go in there, and it's surprising. I can't really say too much because it's again been a while since I read this, but the format is absolutely insane. So you've got pages that look like this, for example, where like the text is laid out like this. Other pages that are like just this single, like barely any words. There are puzzles in here and riddles that you can work out. There are highlighted pieces of text. There's backwards text, upside down text, lists, and occasionally things like this. I'm sure that I missed a lot when I went through it. I went through it with like a little notebook, and I was like making notes when I thought I was discovering things. So initially when I picked it up, I didn't really enjoy it. I was thinking, oh no, I've heard so much about this and I don't think I'm gonna like it. But I sort of persevered, and then once I was in. Like it was like, I don't know, being sucked into a cult or something. Yeah, it's just, oh man, absolute hell of a time. I still cannot believe that I got this colour hardback edition of this for like £1 in a charity shop. I could not believe my luck. I is for Illusions of Isolation, which I've talked about before here. A short story collection by Brennan LaFaro. So yeah, I'll link the video that I mentioned this in. But it's, yeah, I really, really love this collection. I'm not going to talk about it too much here, but Brennan is my first Brennan LaFaro book, and he's the kind of writer where I was like as a writer myself, I was very jealous of the ideas that he thought up for some of these short stories, and his writing's really good, really, really engaging. I was interested in every story, and I have several favourites, one of which absolutely chilled me to the bone, called Just a Note. I've mentioned it before. So yeah, I'm such a huge fan of this book. Disclaimer, I just want to say this because I work with the author that runs the press that published this. So he opened a very brief submission window for people to submit their manuscripts. This was one of the ones that came in, and I was the first point of call for like reading the stuff, and then if I liked the book, I passed it on to Stephen, who then decided if he wanted to publish it as well. So this was the one where I was just raving about this to him like 2 stories in, and I was like, you just go ahead and read it now. So yeah, I was partially responsible for this being published by French press. Just wanted to put that out there in case anyone thinks I'm trying to do like a sneaky market. But yeah, I'll never stop recommending this book. I wouldn't have rallied so hard for Steve to publish it if I didn't love it this much, but really, really recommend that one. J is for John Dies at the End by David Wong. I recommend listening to the audiobook of this because it's really, really funny. I think more of the humour comes out in the audiobook. How do I describe John Dies at the End? It's just absolutely bananas, just batshit elements of cosmic horror, interdimensional stuff, weird creatures, monsters. This is just like balls to the wall, like insanity. So if that's your kind of thing, like verging on bizarro almost. So if that's your bag, maybe this one. Hey, and this one is a little bit mean, I'm so sorry, is for King Carrion by Rich Hawkins. Again, I've mentioned this before. The press that published this, the Sinister Horror Company, has just closed down, so I don't think this is going to be easy to obtain, but I'm sure there are copies out there you can get. This is a vampire novella that gave me sort of like 30 Days of Night and Salem's Lot sort of vibes. Set in a small little town with some toothy fiends running amok, so this is like a really great story. L, The Lottery by Shirley Jackson, which as you can see is absolutely tiny. Now I'm sure that this is one of the stories that inspired The Hunger Games, for example, because the premise is like basically how people are picked in the Hunger Games, but it's just really, really chilling. Very short, but really packs a punch. Basically not going to tell you anything about it because it's so short, so anything I say is going to be a spoiler, but it's about a town that has this lottery. M is for Milk by Adam Millard. I've been talking about this one for years, and I stupidly lent it to someone and of course never got my copy back, and I have yet to get another copy of it. But how do I it's really, really funny, and very weird type of horror. So it's about a guy called Lou that just one day starts lactating, and he's in this, like, I want to say post-apocalyptic, I don't know if that's right, but that's the images conjured in my memory right now. He lives in this town, this like really dusty, dry town, and yeah, he's trying to make ends meet, and he starts lactating, and he gets the bright idea to sell the milk, and people are drinking the milk and stuff happens. It's so weird, so wonderfully weird, so funny. Yeah, I really can't recommend that one enough. That's like that's probably one of my favorite books of all time, actually. I was like tittering, like giggling on every page basically. So yeah, really appealed to my very weird sense of humor apparently. N is for No Happily Ever After by Phil Sloman. This is a collection of short stories and like illusions of isolation, some amazing ideas in there. The writing's really good, very captivating. There's a story in there about an ice cream truck that like really chilled me to the bone. I don't know why. It reminded me of another book that really scared me, but I don't want to say what it was because then you'll know like where it's potentially headed or whatever. I don't want to like spoil anything, but yeah, absolutely great collection. I've talked about that one before. I did include it in my favourite short story collections of last year list. So yeah, really enjoyed that collection, and I recommend that to you if you like a good mix of types of horror. O is for The Outsider by Stephen King. I can't do a to Z of horror without a Stephen King book. This is a bit of a shitter actually to put on this list. Oh, I'm sorry in hindsight, because this is like half a Holly Gibney book, and Holly Gibney is a character from the Mr. Mercedes trilogy, and you can read this. You don't need to have read the Mr. Mercedes trilogy to like understand what's going on in the book. You won't miss much or anything. There is a spoiler for how that trilogy ends though in here. You won't get the full benefit of Holly's character development if you start with this one, but yeah, you can read this as a standalone easily. This is about a guy who gets arrested for a very serious crime, and there's indisputable evidence that he did it, but also there's indisputable evidence that he could not have done it. So I was really intrigued, and it was like, yeah, great concept. P! I love this edition. The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I never read any Oscar Wilde before, but I was enticed by the beautiful presentation of this book that I got from Waterstones. His writing is just so beautiful. This is about a guy called Dorian Gray who has a portrait of himself, and it's a tale of sort of vanity and narcissism, and it's really good. And Oscar Wilde has got like the funniest sense of humor, like laced all in his writing. There's some outdated weird sexist lines in this, which I find hilarious, because I do find really extreme sexist statements absolutely hilarious, especially if they're coming from like older times than we're in now. Don't find it so funny actually in the modern day, but yeah, when you read it, if it's an outdated idea, I find it funny. But yeah, I couldn't put this down. Really loved it. Really charming, great classic, almost gothic horror story. Not quite, because it's not really, doesn't really have gothic themes, but it does have that feel because of the writing style and the time it was written in probably. Can't recommend it enough. Q, I feel a bit bad for this because you do kind of need to have read the previous book to get the full benefit, but The Queen of the Damned by Anne Rice. So the book preceding it is Interview with the Vampire. Oh wait, no, there are two books preceding it. I'm sorry, but this was the only book I could think of really that started with a Q, so I'll do better on my next list. So yeah, Interview with the Vampire, and then The Vampire Lestat, and then this is the third one. Now you could read it as a standalone, but I don't recommend it because Lestat is a quite the hoot of a character, and I also really love Interview with the Vampire and The Vampire Lestat. They're great books. These are great gothic vampire novels. I'm sure everyone in the world has heard of Anne Rice. I really enjoyed the book. If you're judging what the story might be by the film that came out starring Stuart Townsend, just throw that film right out of your mind, because that's, I mean, it does use stuff from the book, but in my opinion, as much as I liked the film for what it was, especially when it came out, because it really appealed to me as a heavy metal loving goth teenager, which is around the time it was released. So it like, yeah, it was, the marketing for that film was ingenious and it was right up my street, and I still do like the film. But in my opinion, that film took the worst elements from the Vampire Lestat and this book and cut out a lot of like the great stuff. So yeah, if you want the full story, go for this. This is a weird one. Roads Less Travelled Volume 2. Now, I have not read Roads Less Travelled Volume 1, but let me explain what this is. It's 2 short stories followed by an in-depth It's 2 short stories followed by an in-depth interview with each author. So you get a short story plus an author interview twice in this book. So we have got 500 Eyes by Rhys Hughes and also On the Cusp of Sleep by Susan York. They are completely different in style, type of horror, tone, everything, but it's what a great little book. It's so great. So this is from Midnight Street Press if you want to find it. This is obviously an indie book. Oh, also I will link all of the indie books in the description. Obviously the mainstream ones like the Stephen King you can find easily, but I'll link the indie ones for you in case you're interested. So On the Cusp of Sleep by Susan York is like a cosmic Lovecraftian sort of horror tale, which I really enjoyed, and I'm just starting to get into that kind of horror. I haven't read a lot of it in the past, so I really enjoyed that. That was like a straight up like old schooly sort of feeling horror story, which I really enjoyed. And then 500 Eyes by Rhys Hughes made me immediately go to Amazon and add every Rhys Hughes book I could find to my wish list. I don't know how to describe 500 Eyes. It's absolutely bananas, but it's it reads like it reminded me of Terry Pratchett and sort of like Monty Python. It like weirdness. It's insane, but I was laughing out loud reading that one and I really enjoyed it. So this book is a really great like sort of mix of completely different types of weird, peculiar sort of stories, and I loved it. S is for Sour Candy by Keelan Patrick Burke. Who guessed that this might be on this list? This is a novella, little short read, like a one sitting kind of read if you want the full benefit in my opinion, and it's about a guy who goes to the shop and his life is fine and it's all in order, and he sees the screaming kid there and he makes the mistake of talking to said screaming kid, and then his life starts falling apart in just like the worst ways. It reminded me of an episode, I think it was Tales from the Dark Side. I think that was the anthology show that I'm thinking of. But oh my god, I just loved it. It was so, I was like in on this one because I just really wanted to know what was going to happen to the guy and what was going on and everything, but like an absolute nightmare that put me off having kids. T is for There's Something Wrong with Auntie Beth, which is another short story collection by Mark Taus, who I'm a big fan of. He's great. It's what can I say about a short story collection that I haven't said about the others? Great mix of different types of horror. There's a story in there that's tied into Nana a little bit, the Nana universe, if you've read Nana, which I also really recommend. Great short story collection. If you're a Mark Taus fan and you haven't come across that one, I couldn't recommend it more. If you're a Mark Taus virgin and you've never read any Mark Taus, maybe start with this one, because it gives a good sampling of all of his like sort of different types of horror that he writes in. Great book. U, a word I can never spell, is the Unheimlich Manoeuvre Deluxe Edition by Tracy Fahey. This one was from Sinister Horror Company, but I know that she has another edition of the Unheimlich Manoeuvre somewhere on the interwebs. I'll find it and put the link. This is another collection, and this was my first Tracy Fahey read, and the thing about her stories is you think you know what you're reading and you think you know where the endings are going, but you don't. And also, as well as like not knowing where the endings are going, she'll just punch you right in the face with them. So there were loads that ended and I was like reading along, and then you get to the last page and I was like, oh! So it was one of those, and it's really good. She's a really good writer. V, I think this is the last but one short story collection on the list. Voices by Kit Power. This is from Black Shuck Books Shadow Collection. So all of the books are standalones, but they have a series called the Shadows Collection. And the thing with the Shadows books is that the books are themed, like the author picks a theme. So this is called Voices, and interpret that however you will. So yeah, the stories all have like tied together by kind of an element or a theme. Let me say, Kit Power is one of my favourite writers of all time. This is a wee little lovely read, great book to dip in and out of if you only have time to read for like 5-10 minutes maybe a day. You could get through a story at a time, or if you're like me, I just sat down and read the entire thing back to back. But I can't recommend this enough. I know I keep saying that, but it's true. Every book on this list I really love. So yeah, Kit Power. Also, you know, just in general, you should be reading Kit Power, you know. W is for We Haunt These Woods by Holly Cornetto, which is a novella, and it reminded me, and it didn't feature an evil clown or anything, but it reminded me of It by Stephen King in a way, and it's about a group that go back to a place where something happened, and you know, horror ensues. It's really, really good read. What more can I say? No, you know, that's all I'm going to say. Holly Cornetto's a really talented writer. I really enjoyed the story. X, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong. Let me confirm my notes. I think it's pronounced Zucha and Others by M.P. Shield, which is a short story collection from quite some time ago. We're going further than 100 years back actually, so the stories compiled are a mix of horror, sci-fi and fantasy, and it's stories that were published from the late 1800s into the early 1900s. So if you're someone who enjoys the more classic side of literature, especially in short story form, there's a lot of short stories back in those days, then you might enjoy that one. Didn't think I'd have one for X, did ya? Y is for The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This is a great old-timey feeling book. I think it's set in like it's set in a puritanical town where people still vary of the opinion that witches are afoot, and you can imagine what that means for any young woman that days, I know, managed to open a pickle jar by themselves or something. Really enjoyed it. It sort of builds and builds and builds, and it did not disappoint me with where it went in the end. This was the debut from Alexis Henderson in mainstream publishing at least, and I really loved it. And then as soon as she brought her next book out, House of Hunger, I bought it immediately. So she's already one of those authors that I will automatically buy anything she puts out. Really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the writing style. And Z, we're ending on an anthology, the only anthology in this list, and it is Zombie Apocalypse, created by Stephen Jones. Now, Stephen Jones is an excellent editor, and if you ever see a horror anthology with his name on it, you may as well just go ahead and buy it, because he is extremely good at selecting stories for anthologies and compiling them, the order they go into, all of that. So yeah, I bought this one years ago just purely based on I was looking for zombie books. I saw it in a Waterstones probably, just picked it up and bought it, and then my Stephen Jones obsession began. Stephen Jones is the only editor whose books I look for edited by, if that makes sense. So I've got authors that I always pick up their books, but Stephen Jones is the only editor that I guaranteed I will buy whatever he puts out. So yeah, not very often that I get to rave about an editor in that sense, but which is unfair, because there are lots of amazing editors. There are lots of great anthologies, lots of people who are really talented putting anthologies together. As someone who has now worked on an anthology, I understand the trials and tribulations, shall we say, of such a process. There is a lot more that goes into that than you would think, and Stephen Jones is like on a throne basically to me for the king of people who are excellent at doing that. So yes, if you like some good zombie carnage, some well-written stories, this is a great anthology to pick up. I need a nap. That is the first A to Z list. Let me know if you would like another book A to Z list, or if you would like a horror film A to Z recommendation list, because I have made notes for one of those as well. I'm definitely going to do that, but let me know what you want to see first. Also, if you have A to Z recommendations, please put them in the comments, because especially for those trickier letters, because there were a couple that were, I had to really rack my brain for things I'd read and go through my GOODREADS won't let you filter the books by letter, which is kind of irritating. I didn't know that until today when I tried. But yes, Put your recommendations in the comments for me, please. If you have any questions about any of those books, yeah, feel free to ask. Also, if there's any way to shut off the stress of listening to your cat being sick, I'd love pointers on that too. And also, finally, if you have a mallet and you wanted to come to my house and just boink me on the head so that I can finally get some sleep. Okay, so tomorrow we have a gaming video coming up, and we have started a new game, Mikey and I, so I'm really, really excited. And then I will see you on Saturday for another gaming video, and also Sunday for my next book video, which will be a fortnightly wrap up because I didn't get to do one last time. So yeah, thank you very much for being here. I still don't have a sign off, so please subscribe to my channel, please.